how we can keep that vision, which was the second part of what I was talking about, and finally why the vision is important and what value it has for us. It's by Mary Oliver, American poet. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. So, thank you. So I think the form is to encourage any discussion, anything that anybody would like to say or talk about for a little while, and then we adjourn for drinks or nibbles or looking at books or whatever. So do speak if you feel moved.
What's your view of the wind turbine at Carr Gomm?
I like wind turbines. I think, in the old days, this landscape was peopled with giants, real giants. They were giant windmills, and the Long Man of Wilmington, for instance. If you go up there, there's some barrows up there, Huntersburg and so on. But there's also something that you can confuse for a barrow, but which is actually the base of an old windmill. So it looks now it's decayed so much. It looks like a sort of strange kind of tumulus and so on. So there were windmills all around this place. And they were part of the landscape, and I know that they have a kind of industrial quality to them when you look at them in some ways. But I feel there's a particular place in New Zealand. I remember driving on the North Island and coming into Ashurst and driving over this sort of hilltop from Foxton, coming down and then seeing hundreds of windmills would seem to be. And it was incredibly exciting because for me it's a message of hope that actually it is possible for us to get out of this jam that we've created for ourselves. So they don't bother me, and I think it's a shame that people have protested about it. What do you think of it? Do you think it's a good idea to have one, or don't you like it?
Well, I'm not directly involved, but I know that in terms of energy, it's symbolic only, because in terms of any kind of long-term thing, it's it's nothing.
Yeah.
And then there are issues of if you live there, sound. I mean, I don't really know, but people say the sound and there are problems.
Right. Yes. I really don't know about what it's like to live really near one. No, I've been up pretty close to them, and I haven't even heard any noise. But it's always the case, isn't it, with this question of the percentage. We've been looking at having solar photovoltaic panels on the roof. The government have got a scheme now where they pay you and you feed your electricity back into the grid and all the rest of it. There's two ways you can look at it. You can either look at it as such a kind of tiny contribution. Is it worth it? Or I think the way you look at it is this. For me, the problem about the size, because in a way the question that you touch on is very, very deep, which is the scale of the problem that we face, and the way that scale disempowers us. You read about all this stuff, and it's just so overwhelming. The plastic in the ocean. It's a lovely story which resolves it for me, which is the one that you may have heard of, which is an old man is walking towards the beach and he sees a young girl, and he sees lots of starfish that have got washed up on the seashore, and she's picking a starfish up one at a time and hurling it back into the sea. And he goes up to her and he says, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, if the tide doesn't pick these up, these starfish are going to die. So I'm putting them back in the sea." And he says, "But there are hundreds of them, thousands of them here. What difference does it make?" And she's holding this one starfish, and she says, "Well, it makes a difference to this starfish," and throws it back in. And when I read that story, it was like such a relief to me, because I had this old man inside me that kept saying, "Oh, what's the point?" You know. So that's the sort of what the idea that it comes up to me.
I have a question. I'm about to start teaching at school in Croydon, and obviously the children there are not going to have had the opportunities to experience what you've been talking about. So, in light of what you just said about the starfish, how can you best help them to have a sense of what you're talking about?
Yeah, good question. Well, there's an initiative called Forest Schools. I don't know if you've heard of them. But it would be interesting to contact them, to ask them what ideas they might have. If we focus on the particular idea I suggested, which is around time and place, I don't know, but I mean, if you're able to take them out on a walk, there's something about a long walk. The walks I suggested are quite short. I mean, the real trick is actually to do a long walk, is to do a walk that you think is too long, because then you get your second wind, you push through some kind of barrier, and it gets kind of exciting, I think. But to take kids out on a walk and to link it with the stories in the landscape, I think that would be very interesting. To bring it alive in a way. And of course, you may have recognised that what I'm talking about is something that is familiar in other cultures. Say, for instance, the Aboriginal culture in Australia, where you have the sense that the landscape is alive and that particular landscape features all have stories, and that a tribe will know the story from one place to one place. And then they only know the story so far, and then the next tribe will know the next part of the story. So this would be like those of us who are Louisians here might know the story of the gill giant at Glynde and the Firle giant, or maybe all the way up to the Long Man, the stories of their conflicts and quarrels and loves and so on. But beyond Windover Hill, we wouldn't know. But the Eastbourne folk would know, the stories of the rest of the tracks and so on. This is a lovely idea.